Hi everyone, I'm doing my John Maxwell, and today I'm moving on to a new chapter, a new section, I could say. It's the law of buy-in, and it's basically looking at what comes first, the vision or the leader. So for us as Christians, Jesus comes first. He is our leader, and he's the Prince of Peace. The readings today that John Maxwell has in this book, it's Judges 6:11 to 7:25. And it's basically the angel of the Lord appearing to Gideon, and Gideon is saying, how can you choose me? I'm the weakest, and my clan is the weakest. And how can you send me to do this? And basically, God is reassuring him that he's not going to die after seeing the angel of peace. And God's victory will come through him, through the weakest clan and the weakest tribes. So for today, there's just this prayer which I enjoyed reading. It says, Dear God, I want to be a godly leader who pleases you and sets a good example for those who follow me. I echo the words of the psalmist who wrote, Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Help me to become the leader you desire me to be, so that I can lead others to do the same. Amen. So the power of the vision for us as Christians, it's being able to see, the ability to see, awareness, to have the vision of what we want in life. Otherwise, other people are never going to see it. If we don't know where we want to be, where we want to go, other people are not going to be able to see that vision either. So for us as followers of Jesus, we know our vision is to follow him, and we know that that's our path that we will be on. Our attitude is to have the faith to believe, even when we feel that it's very difficult, even when we feel that we are the weakest, we are the ones that could never be chosen by God. We have faith that God will work through us to accomplish his ends. And he gives the example that Gideon had a difficult time believing he could free his countrymen from the Midianites, but the angel helped him to overcome his doubt. And then the gift of courage. The gift of courage comes from the Lord. It comes through the gifts of the Holy Spirit working in us. So, for example, for me with my job search, when I go and I knock on doors, or when I go to all these retail stores, not everybody receives me favorably. Some people don't like it, but the majority of them do. And they understand that the economy is hard and people are looking for work and out of a job. So it takes courage to put yourself out there, to comment on social media posts, to reach out to people, to let them know that I'm out of a job and I'm looking for work. And the reassurance over and over again in the Bible, in the scriptures, is do not be afraid. And there is an element of fear, of anxiety, because you don't know how people are going to receive it. Not everybody receives it favorably, but we take our courage and we go out and we continue to look for that next opportunity. And then achievement, the hope to endure. So once you start moving forward, that's not when your troubles end. That's when your troubles begin, because it's easier to just stay at home and do nothing and just say, I'll just wait for that job to come to me. I'm not going to do anything. And when the company has a job, they can call me. But once you start moving forward, that's where your troubles begin, so to speak. So we have to be praying. We have to be focused on the scriptures. We have to be focused on our faith, because that's what strengthens us, especially if you're not living with anybody. Like with me, I have friends that pray with me. We'll phone each other and we'll pray together. Or they'll pray for me, I'll pray for them. When you have a family, it's easier because you can pray together with each other. But when you're on your own, you need that community. We go to church, we find that fellowship there. So that's the gift that we have of our vision. So for me, my vision is not to remain unemployed, living in a rented home, unable to travel, unable to buy a car, overweight, sick. That's not my vision for my life. Obviously, nobody would want that. So my vision is to continue to exercise, to eat healthy, to cook healthy, to do all the things I can till I can get to that point. And so you can take these scriptures and you can just see how you can use them in your own life and how they can help you on your journey as an immigrant in a country. So for me, I've been in Canada a long time now. South Africa is not my home. Zimbabwe is not my home. I live here. I'm a citizen of this country. So whatever I do, I have to balance it between what Canada's doing and the aims we're trying to do to help the African nations come up, our universities, the people back there. But we also have to take into consideration what our government is doing here. So we have to walk a fine line. Today I attended a seminar on how looking at climate change is affecting different parts of the world for WITS. And that helps me because that's also one of the aims we look at in the One campaign when we do our advocacy work. And it's interesting to see many of the things that they talk about have always been talked about. The need to use seeds that are resilient, to have the lands lie fallow and then give them time to regenerate when you're farming, and all those things are good. But they're also saying that, the West, the ideology is just that they don't want migrants because of climate change. And really, that's partly true from my perspective, because we have a lot of people coming in because of climate change, but it's also because of the human rights, because there are mass violations of human rights in different countries, just like they were under colonialism. But if people don't want to talk about that or see that, that's up to them, because there were human rights when violations under colonialism, and again now there are human rights violations taking place. That's why the sanctions are in place in many countries. And just like that series showed of Gold Mafia, of how people are taking gold in suitcases to Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, people are starving in Zimbabwe. People don't have water. People don't have food. So there's a balance there that we have to keep when we meet with our MPs, when we talk to them, because we also have to present it in a way that it makes sense for them to give the money and then to use it in a way that is going to build partnerships. So that's something that I have to keep in mind, and all of us who do the kind of volunteering that I do have to keep in mind, because sometimes the MPs say, well, why should I give this money to Africa? There's people in Canada that need the help. We have a growing problem of food insecurity, of people using food banks, of climate change that's affecting people here. So why should we help? And if the African leaders and universities and nations are going to say, well, you can't tell us what to do, then give us your solutions so that we can present it in a way that we can still get the funding, because obviously people want to see that there's progress being made. They want to see that human rights violations are going down, and they don't deny it. It is part of the problem that there's mass migrations of people, refugees, leaving Africa, risking their lives to go to Europe, to come to Canada, to go to America, because of the human rights violations. So nobody is going to deny that. But it was a good seminar, and it was very informative, very educational, and it was good to hear about it here in Canada, and not so much Canada, but in the US, even the priests are telling people to stock up, to buy extra tons of foods, to buy non-perishables, put them in glass jars. People are buying bunkers because they are fearful that we may have a nuclear war. So that strategy may not work in South Africa, but it's something that people are doing here because that is what has been kind of told to people to do. So we're not saying that you have to do it in South Africa or in Zimbabwe, but that's what people are doing here. They're buying non-perishables, they're keeping extra toilet paper, basic necessities, because things have become so hard. And as those partnerships develop, then we can help each other, just like how South Africa sent firefighters to help us when the fires broke out. There'll be reciprocal relationships. So it's interesting for me because I left Zimbabwe a long time ago, and I lived through that, through the IMF, the World Bank coming in, putting in their policies, and the farmers saying this is not going to work here, but nobody listened, and they needed the funding, so they accepted those policies, and things went downhill. But the other side of that is the corruption and the greed. The people at the top who have the education and the skills, they're earning the top dollars, and everybody else is suffering or having to become corrupt in order to survive. So it's very, very sad to see that. And the same thing's happening here in Canada. People are turning to food banks. Some of us don't even qualify for the food banks, so we have to turn to family and friends to help us. And we don't have a choice. And it is very humiliating when you've got good skills, you've got good qualifications, and you can't get any work, and you're sitting at home. So we have to have the courage to try to use our voices and to do whatever we can. And the concept of working for your living, that's also Bible-based. It's also from the scriptures, and it's part of our Catholic way of life, that we go out and we work. We don't sit at home and expect other people to take care of us and provide for us. It's not the right way to live. And we also don't believe in unprovoked attacks, and we try to help. We pray for others. And one of our messages in the Catholic Church is to pray for the end to communism, because communism does create big divides. I mean, it's nice to see that South Africa is finally working on their electricity, but 100 days of electricity is not something to boast about. So, the Chinese did a lot of damage in Zimbabwe, and the Zimbabweans have gone through a lot. And I still have friends there, I still have family there. So I do whatever I can from here to help with my time, because I don't have money to give. When I get my groceries, you have the option to give $2 towards the charity. Sometimes I do that. But we always put our faith into action in our Christian tradition. And this is part of the John Maxwell's teaching. So the question for reflection is, would you follow you? Because if you wouldn't follow your own, what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish, then why would other people follow you? If I just sat at home and said, oh, I don't care about bettering my skills or getting education or improving my life, why would other people follow me? If I say, okay, I'm just content to just go stand in the street, put a hat in my hand and beg, why would other people follow me? It's not anything that they would aspire to. And even the work that I do at the One Campaign, the idea is that eventually those countries become self-sufficient, not to keep them dependent on the West. and not to keep them constantly in debt. We do what we can to help with vaccines, to help with treatable diseases. Where there's a surplus, we encourage our governments to give and to help. But at the end of the day, if the African leaders and nations are going to put us down, and if they're going to say, oh, you know what, these people, they're only doing it for their own agenda, they don't really care about human rights violations and about what's happening to people, that's not really true. So there has to be a balance, and we also have to be respected for what we are doing from Canada to help. Because if we are not respected, and if our contribution is not valued, and then they're going to say, oh, there they go, they just do-gooders, we won't help. Why would we help from here? We won't. We'd rather focus our time and energy on only helping our own countries. So the African leaders also have to be careful of how they accept the help that they're getting from places like China, from wherever it is. Because what happened with Britain, it's not to say that it can't happen again with China. Because the investments and everything that they did with Britain when they colonized, the infrastructure in Zimbabwe is perfect. So they left the infrastructure in place. They didn't do what they did in some countries and fill the pipes with cement and leave people with nothing. They left things in a good way. So there has to be a balance. And if people don't want our aid, and they don't want us to help, and they don't want us to help with the vaccines and with whatever we're doing, then they should make it known to the One Campaign and to the church and to wherever they're getting the aid from, and say, look, we're not interested in getting your aid and getting your influence or getting your ideas. We want to do things on our own and do it our way. And it will be taken on board, but then when there are climate refugees and there are migrants, the nations will say, take them back, like they did in Britain. So there has to be a balance of the message that's coming out from India, from South Africa, from Zimbabwe. They have to keep that in mind, because when Zimbabwe holds big conferences and they spend millions on those conferences, and then there are people starving and there's no water for people, it doesn't leave a good impression. So we have to fight for whatever funding we get from our governments. We have to meet with our MPs. We have to write to them. We have to advocate to say why we think it's important. So it's not easy the way people think that, oh yeah, they're sitting in Canada and dictating what they think we should do. It's not that easy. And if people don't want it, then they have to be prepared to take people back to their countries, because there has to be a balance. People are trying to help. And when Bono came out and they talked about the need to use seeds that are resilient and to leave the land fallow and to have that, like what they were doing in Britain, people turned against it. They're like, oh yeah, there he goes again, what does he know? But that's the same thing that people are saying now is what worked. So we get pushback as well. We don't get the pushback only from our MPs in Canada. We get the pushback from South Africa as well. So, if our help is not needed and our ideas are not needed, then bring us your solutions, and then we'll see what we can do to help, because we're not getting any money from it. My life has not gotten any better from volunteering with the One Campaign or being a part of Bono's team. I can assure you of that. I don't get anything out of it, except that I do it because I loved Africa and I would like to see the nations come up. I would like to see things change for people there. And of course, I want my life to be better. That's why I do everything I can here. I keep my skills up to date. I keep my talents up to date. I put my music and my talks on social media because I want my life to get better. I don't want to remain in debt and renting and not being able to make ends meet. Of course, I want things to get better for myself. So that's the talk for today on the law of buy-in. And that's the question that people can take away. Would you follow you?